Movies make being a Wild West sheriff look like non-stop gunfights and dramatic showdowns at high noon. But the reality, it was a hell of a lot weirder than that. Sheriffs spent more time collecting taxes and cleaning streets than they did in shootouts. In fact, most Wild West sheriffs never fired their guns in the line of duty. Not once. Oh, and if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. Super curious where you're all listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Always blows my mind how people are falling asleep to this all over the world. Alright, let's head back to 1880s frontier Kansas. Trust me, it's going to be quite a ride. But first, get comfortable. Seriously. Adjust those pillows, pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. So congratulations, you just woke up in 1883 in a small but growing cattle town in Kansas. Your eyes flutter open to the first light of dawn filtering through thin cotton curtains. The room is chilly, no central heating here, just the lingering warmth from last night's wood stove that's now nothing but embers. Not like your comfy bed right now with its temperature control and plush mattress. Here, you're on a simple wooden frame with a horsehair mattress that crinkles when you move. Outside, you can already hear the town stirring, horses snorting, wagon wheels creaking on dirt roads, the distant call of a rooster that seems determined to make sure everyone's day starts whether they want it to or not. The smell of wood smoke hangs in the air, mixed with the earthy scent of livestock and the promise of the coffee already brewing downstairs. This isn't just any morning for you. Today's election day, and you've thrown your hat in the ring for county sheriff. It might surprise you to learn that back in the Wild West, sheriffs weren't appointed because they were the fastest guns or the toughest hombres. They were elected by regular folks, which meant to become sheriff, you needed to be good with people, persuasive, popular even. This wasn't just some badge they handed to the meanest son of a gun in town. It was a political office. You've been campaigning for weeks now, not with fancy TV ads or social media posts, but the old-fashioned way, shaking hands at the general store, buying rounds at the saloon, making promises to farmers about protecting their livestock from rustlers, assuring merchants you'll keep the drunks from breaking their windows, telling the church ladies you'll maintain the peace on Sundays. Your competition for the job is the current deputy, a man named Hank Miller. He's been the right hand of Sheriff Davis for 3 years now. Sheriff Davis is retiring, not by choice, but because a bullet caught him in the hip last year during a bank robbery, and he hasn't walked right since. Hank figures the job should naturally fall to him. He's got experience after all, but folks around town have mixed feelings about Hank. Some say he's too cozy with the saloon owners. Others say he's too quick to crack heads when the cowboys come to town. You're running as the reform candidate, the respectable option. You've never worn a badge before, but you served in the army during the last years of the Civil War. You know how to handle a gun and yourself in a fight. More importantly, you've got a reputation as an honest businessman with your small hardware store. And in a town where corruption is as common as dust, that counts for something. Election day in a frontier town isn't like the ones you might be familiar with. No little booths with curtains for privacy, no "I voted" stickers. Instead, men gather in the town hall, a generous name for what's really just the largest saloon, and cast their votes by writing names on slips of paper. Women can't vote yet, but that doesn't mean they don't have influence. The wives, mothers and daughters of the town have been bending ears and shaping opinions for weeks. You spent the morning pacing your small home, too nervous to eat the breakfast your wife prepared. She watches you with concerned eyes, knowing what this job would mean for your family. More status? Yes. Better pay than the hardware store provides, but also danger. Every time you pin on that star, you'd be painting a target on your chest. "You don't have to do this, John," she says quietly, her hands fidgeting with her apron. "The store provides well enough." You look at her, this woman who followed you west with nothing but faith and grit, who's built a life with you in this rough-edged town. I know, Margaret, but somebody's got to do it, and I don't trust Hank to do it right. By noon, the votes are cast. By 1 o'clock, they're counted. And by 2, the mayor, a portly man with a walrus mustache named Elijah Pemberton, announces the results from the steps of the town hall. Ladies and gentlemen, by a margin of 23 votes, our new county sheriff is John Callahan. A cheer goes up from your supporters. Handshakes and backslaps rain down on you. Hank Miller gives you a stiff nod from across the street before turning and walking towards the nearest saloon. You know you've made an enemy today, the first of many, likely. Mayor Pemberton ushers you into his office, a cramped room at the back of his general store, and presents you with the badge. It's simpler than you expected, a 6-pointed star cut from silver-coloured metal with sheriff stamped across it. When he pins it to your chest, it feels heavier than it looks. "Congratulations, Sheriff Callahan," the mayor says, not quite meeting your eye. "I expect you'll want to get settled in your office. Frank will show you around." Frank, it turns out, is the town clerk, a thin, nervous man with ink-stained fingers who seems to carry the weight of the town's paperwork on his narrow shoulders. He leads you to the sheriff's office, a small wooden building sandwiched between the barbershop and the telegraph office. Inside, the office is sparse: a desk, a chair, a gun rack on the wall with a shotgun and 2 rifles, a wood stove in the corner, a wanted poster tacked to the wall, some horse thief from 2 counties over, and at the back 2 cells with iron bars and thin mattresses on wooden platforms. "This here's all yours now," Frank says, gesturing vaguely around the room. "Sheriff Davis cleared out his personal effects yesterday. The keys are in the desk drawer. They open the cells, the gun cabinet, and the evidence locker." He points to a small safe in the corner. "What about deputies?" you ask. Frank shrugs. "You can hire whoever you want, so long as the town council approves the expense. Most sheriffs round these parts make do with 1 full-time deputy and a few part-timers they call in when needed." After Frank leaves, you sit at the desk, your desk now, and try to take it all in. The weight of the badge, the responsibility, the danger. You open the desk drawer and find the keys, as promised, along with a ledger, a few pencils, and a half-empty bottle of whiskey. Sheriff Davis's parting gift, perhaps. You're examining the shotgun from the gun rack when the door bangs open. A young cowboy, barely out of his teens, stands there swaying slightly. His eyes are bloodshot and he reeks of cheap whiskey. "You the new sheriff?" He slurs, squinting at you. You nod, setting the shotgun aside but keeping it within reach. "That's right, Sheriff Callahan. What can I do for you, son?" The cowboy grins, revealing a missing tooth. "Well, Sheriff, I just wanted to be the first to welcome you to the job proper-like." He sways a bit more, then steadies himself against the doorframe, "and to let you know that me and the boys from the Circle B don't much care for lawmen telling us what we can and can't do when we come to town." You stand slowly, measuring the distance between you and the young hothead. He doesn't appear to be armed, at least not visibly, but that doesn't mean much. "I appreciate the welcome," you say carefully, "but I'd appreciate it even more if you'd sleep off that whiskey before you cause trouble that'll land you in one of those cells." The cowboy laughs. "You sound just like the last one. He thought he was tough too till he caught a bullet." There it is, your first test as sheriff, not an hour into the job. How you handle this moment will set the tone for your tenure. Push back too hard and you risk escalation. Too soft and word will spread that the new sheriff is yellow. You step around the desk, keeping your movements calm and deliberate. "Son, I don't know you, and you don't know me, so let me introduce myself proper. I'm John Callahan. Before I opened the hardware store, I was with the 8th Kansas Infantry. I've seen things that would turn your hair white." Now I don't want trouble, and I don't think you do either. So how about you head back to the saloon, or better yet, find a place to sleep it off? The cowboy stares at you, weighing his options. Finally, he spits on your floor. We'll see what kind of sheriff you really are, Callahan. Cattle drives coming through next week. That's when the real fun starts. With that, he turns and stumbles back out into the street. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. Then you grab a rag from the desk and clean up the spit. Welcome to your first day as sheriff. It doesn't take long to realize that the job is nothing like the dime novels make it out to be. The next morning, Frank the clerk drops off a stack of papers that nearly reach the ceiling. What's all this? You ask, eyeing the tower of documents. Tax records, Frank says simply. Sheriff's responsible for collecting property taxes in the county. Most folks in town pay regular, but the outlying farms and ranches, well, they need some convincing sometimes. You stare at him. Tax collecting? That's part of the job? Frank nods, adjusting his spectacles. That, serving warrants, maintaining the jail, keeping the peace. Oh, and the town council expects you to enforce the ordinance about livestock on Main Street. Too many cowboys, letting their horses drop manure everywhere. So much for the glamorous life of a frontier lawman. By the end of your first week, you've spent more time with paperwork than your pistol, more hours mediating disputes between neighbors than tracking outlaws. There was Mrs. Henderson complaining about Mr. Peterson's dog digging in her garden, the two saloon owners on opposite ends of Main Street accusing each other of watering down their whiskey, a dispute between the blacksmith and the livery owner over a customer they both claimed. And yes, telling half a dozen cowboys that they couldn't race their horses down the middle of town. One afternoon, you're summoned to the general store where a travelling salesman is being accused of selling snake oil. The bottle in question promises to cure everything from rheumatism to baldness to female complaints. The salesman, a slick fellow in a checkered suit, swears on a stack of Bibles that his elixir is legitimate. My good sheriff, he says with an oily smile, I assure you this tonic is made from the finest herbs gathered by Chinese mystics in the mountains of Tibet. You pick up the bottle, uncork it, and take a sniff. Your eyes water immediately. It's mostly alcohol with some kind of bitter herb thrown in for flavour. Probably wouldn't kill anyone, but it sure wouldn't cure anything either. Sir, you say, recorking the bottle, I believe you're in violation of the town ordinance against fraudulent commerce. The salesman's smile falters. I'm sure we can come to some arrangement, Sheriff. Perhaps a complimentary case for your personal use? And there it is, your first bribe offer, not from a dangerous outlaw or a corrupt businessman, but from a two-bit peddler of fake medicine. No, sir, we cannot, you say firmly. You can pack up your wares and move on, or you can spend the night in my jail. Your choice. The salesman chooses to leave town. Later that evening, as you're locking up the office, Mayor Pemberton stops by. He seems nervous, fidgeting with his watch chain. Heard you ran off that medicine show, fellow, he says, not quite meeting your eye. He was selling coloured alcohol and calling it medicine, you reply. Seemed the right thing to do. The mayor clears his throat. Yes, well, in the future, perhaps consult with me before you drive business away from town. That man paid for a vendor's license, after all, and Widow Jenkins says his tonic helped her lumbago last time he came through. You stare at the mayor, realization dawning. Did you take a cut of his sales, Mayor? Pemberton's face reddens. That's not the point. The point is, this town needs commerce to grow. Sometimes that means flexibility. Flexibility, you repeat. Is that what we're calling it now? The mayor straightens his vest. Just remember, Sheriff, the town council appointed you. They can just as easily unappoint you. As he walks away, you feel the weight of the badge even more heavily. It seems keeping the peace is the least of your worries. Navigating the politics of a frontier town might be the real challenge. That night, as you sit at your kitchen table cleaning your revolver, your wife watches you with worried eyes. "How was it today?" she asks, setting a cup of coffee beside you. You consider lying, telling her it was fine, but Margaret deserves better than that. "Interesting," you say finally. "Not what I expected." "No gunfights yet?" There's an attempt at humour in her voice, but the worry breaks through. You smile, reassuring her. "No gunfights, just paperwork and politics." "Politics?" she asks, sitting across from you. You tell her about the mayor and the snake oil salesman, about the tax collection duties, about the endless small disputes that apparently fall to the sheriff to resolve. "Sounds like you're as much a judge as a lawman," Margaret observes. You nod, reassembling your revolver with practiced hands. "Seems that way. Everyone has an opinion about how I should do the job. The mayor wants me to look the other way sometimes. The church folk want me to crack down on the saloons. The saloon owners want me to give their customers more leeway. The merchants want me to keep the peace but not scare away business." Margaret reaches across the table and takes your hand. "And what do you want, John?" It's a simple question, but it stops you short. What did you want? When you decided to run for sheriff, was it really about justice and keeping the peace? Or was it about the status, the authority, or something else entirely? "I want to do what's right," you say finally. "Whatever that turns out to be?" Margaret smiles, but there's sadness in it. Just be careful whose version of right you choose. The next morning brings a new challenge. A rider comes tearing into town just after sunrise, practically falling off his horse in his haste to reach your office. "Sheriff," he gasps, out of breath. "Come quick, there's been a killing out at the Johnson place." You grab your hat, your gun belt, and saddle up your horse. The Johnson farm is about 5 miles outside town, a modest spread run by a hard-working family who keep to themselves. As you ride, the young man, a neighbour's son named Timothy, fills you in on what little he knows. Mrs. Johnson sent him to fetch the sheriff after she found her husband dead in their barn, apparently beaten to death. When you arrive, the scene is grim. Samuel Johnson lies on the barn floor, his face barely recognisable from the beating he took. His wife sits on a hay bale nearby, her face blank with shock, their 3 young children huddled against her. "Mrs. Johnson," you say gently, kneeling before her. "I'm sorry for your loss. Can you tell me what happened?" She looks at you with empty eyes. "I don't know, Sheriff. Sam went out to milk the cow at dawn, like always. When he didn't come back for breakfast, I sent little Samuel Jr. to check on him." Her voice breaks. "My boy saw him first. My boy saw his daddy like that." You look at the oldest child, maybe 8 years old, staring silently at the ground. Another life changed forever by violence. "Was anything taken?" you ask. "Any livestock missing?" Mrs. Johnson shakes her head. "Nothing I can see. We don't have much worth stealing." You spend the next hour examining the scene, looking for clues. Samuel Johnson was a big man, strong from years of farm work. Whoever killed him either caught him by surprise or was even bigger and stronger. There are no bullet wounds, just the damage done by fists and what looks like a piece of firewood that now lies broken and bloody beside the body. No footprints other than the family's and yours. No horse tracks that shouldn't be there. No obvious motive. You're about to give up when you notice something caught in Johnson's hand. Carefully, you pry open his fingers. It's a small piece of checked fabric, likely torn from the killer's clothing during the struggle. It's not much, but it's something. You place it carefully in your pocket, then turn to Mrs. Johnson. "I'll need to take your husband's body back to town," you say as gently as possible. "The undertaker will prepare him. Then we can return him to you for burial." She nods numbly. Is there someone who can stay with you? A neighbor or family member? My sister lives in town, she whispers. Send for her, please. You promise to do so, then wrap Samuel Johnson's body in a blanket and secure it across your horse. The ride back to town is slow and somber, the weight of your first murder investigation heavy on your shoulders. News travels fast in a small town. By the time you reach Main Street with your grim cargo, a crowd has gathered. You see concern on some faces, morbid curiosity on others. The undertaker, a solemn man named Graves, a coincidence that never fails to raise eyebrows among newcomers, meets you and helps transfer the body to his establishment. Nasty business, he mutters as you lay Johnson on his table. Who'd want to kill Sam? He was a quiet sort. That's what I aim to find out, you say, retrieving the scrap of fabric from your pocket. Recognize this pattern? It was clutched in his hand. Graves examines it, then shakes his head. Could be from any man's shirt or jacket. Checked fabric like this is common enough? You nod, disappointed but not surprised. If you notice anything unusual when you prepare him, let me know. Back at your office, you record the details of the case in your ledger, your first murder as sheriff. You have a feeling it won't be your last. As the day wears on, visitors trickle in. Mrs. Johnson's sister coming to thank you for treating the family with respect. The bank manager revealing that Johnson had recently taken out a loan to expand his farm. A few curious townsfolk eager for gossip more than justice. And just before sunset, a face you recognize, the young cowboy who'd threatened you on your first day. He's sober now, his manner less aggressive but no more friendly. Heard about Johnson, he says, leaning against the door frame. Bad business. What can I do for you, you ask, watching him carefully. He shrugs. Just thought you should know. Johnson had a run-in with some of the boys from the Circle B last month, accused them of letting cattle graze on his land. Got pretty heated. You straighten in your chair. Is that so? Any particular boys I should talk to? The cowboy pushes off from the doorframe, preparing to leave. Wasn't there myself, just heard talk, but if I was the new sheriff looking to make a name for himself, I might ask around about Pete Rawlins. He's got a temper. He tips his hat. Good luck, Sheriff. You're going to need it. As he walks out, you're left wondering whether he's genuinely trying to help or sending you on a wild goose chase, or worse, into a trap. Either way, you've got your first lead, and tomorrow you'll need to ride out to the Circle B ranch and have a word with this Pete Rawlins. It's been quite a first week as sheriff, not at all what the dime novels prepared you for. Less gunslinging, more paperwork, less heroics, more politics, but underneath it all, a real sense that what you do matters, that the badge, for all its complications, stands for something important in this dusty corner of the frontier. As you lock up the office and head home for the night, you see the town differently now, not just as a collection of buildings and people, but as a community that, for better or worse, has entrusted its safety and order to you. It's a responsibility that weighs heavily, but one you're determined to bear with honor. And tomorrow brings new challenges, a murder to solve, a potential confrontation at the Circle B, tax collections to oversee, the mundane and the dangerous, all part of a sheriff's life in the Wild West. When you finally reach home, Margaret has dinner waiting, a simple but hearty stew that fills the small house with its savoury aroma. She doesn't ask about your day, can see the weight of it in your eyes. Instead, she simply sits beside you, her presence a comfort in the gathering darkness. Later, as you lie in bed listening to the distant piano music from the saloon and the occasional shout or laugh from the street, you wonder what the coming days will bring. The cattle drive the young cowboy mentioned will arrive soon, bringing with it dozens of hard-living, hard-drinking cowboys, flush with pay and looking for entertainment. Your first real test as sheriff. But that's a worry for tomorrow. Tonight, the badge rests on your bedside table, its weight temporarily lifted from your shoulders as sleep finally claims you. Morning comes too soon, the pale light of dawn filtering through your window. Your muscles ache from yesterday's ride to the Johnson farm and back. Margaret is already up, the smell of coffee and frying bacon drifting up from downstairs. The badge sits where you left it on the bedside table, catching the early light. Another day as sheriff begins. The town is quiet at this hour, a few early risers, the baker already at work, smoke rising from the chimney of his shop, the stable hand feeding horses, a pair of miners heading out to try their luck at the creek where there'd been talk of gold. They nod respectfully as you pass, the badge on your chest earning their deference. When you reach your office, you're surprised to find someone waiting, a lean, weathered man in his 50s with a thick moustache and calm eyes. He sits in the chair across from your desk, boots crossed at the ankle, hat resting on his knee. "Morning, Sheriff," he says, standing as you enter. "Name's Bill Harper. I was deputy to Sheriff Davis before his injury. Was away visiting my daughter when the election happened." You shake his offered hand, noting the calluses and the steady grip. "John Callahan. Pleasure to meet you, Deputy Harper." He looks at you appraisingly. "Former deputy, as it stands, until you decide otherwise." You hadn't given much thought to deputies yet. Frank the clerk had mentioned you could hire one with town council approval, but with everything else going on, it hadn't been a priority. "What can you tell me about the Johnson murder?" you ask, hanging your hat on the rack by the door. Harper's expression darkens. Sam Johnson was a good man, quiet, kept to himself, had some trouble with the Circle B recently over grazing rights, but nothing that should have led to this. "That's what I heard," you say, taking a seat at your desk. "Was planning to ride out there today to talk to a cowhand named Pete Rawlins." Harper nods. "Pete's got a temper, but he's not stupid. If he did this, he won't be hanging around waiting for you." The conversation shifts to other matters, the upcoming cattle drive, the various personalities around town you should know about, the practical aspects of the job. You find yourself warming to Harper. He's direct and knowledgeable, with none of the political manoeuvring you've already encountered from others in town. "So," you say finally, "you interested in getting your deputy badge back?" Harper smiles slightly. "Thought you'd never ask, but there's something you should know first." He rolls up his sleeve, revealing a nasty scar on his forearm. "Got this breaking up a knife fight at the Gilded Cage last year. I'm not as quick as I used to be." You appreciate his honesty. "I don't need quick. I need someone who knows this county and its people, someone I can trust." And just like that, you have a deputy. The town council will grumble about the expense, but having a man like Harper beside you is worth it. Your first task together is one you've been dreading: tax collection. The property taxes that fund the county's operations aren't paid willingly by many of the farmers and ranchers in the outlying areas. It falls to the sheriff to ride out and remind them of their civic duty. "Most unpleasant part of the job," Harper says as you saddle up. "Davis used to say he'd rather face a gunslinger than a farmer who doesn't want to pay his taxes. He's not wrong. Your first stop is the Wilson farm, where old man Wilson greets you with a shotgun across his lap as he rocks on his porch. 'Taxman cometh,' he cackles when he sees your badges glinting in the sun. Right on schedule." Harper takes the lead, having done this many times before. "Morning, Mr. Wilson. Fine day." The old man spits over the porch railing. "Be finer if you weren't here to rob me." "Now, Mr. Wilson," Harper says patiently, "you know these taxes pay for the roads you use to get your crops to market, for the schoolhouse where your grandchildren learn their letters, for me and the sheriff here to keep the peace." Wilson scoffs. Roads are mud when it rains, dirt when it don't. School moms from back east and teachers nonsense. And peace? When's the last time law came out here when we needed it? You can see this is an old argument between them. Wilson complaining, Harper cajoling. Eventually the old man grudgingly counts out the money, less than what a good horse would cost, and thrusts it at Harper with a scowl. "Highwayman, the lot of you," he grumbles. "See you next quarter, Mr. Wilson," Harper replies cheerfully. This scene repeats at farm after farm, ranch after ranch. Some pay without complaint, others haggle and delay. One woman, a widow with 3 young children, breaks down in tears when you arrive, saying she doesn't have the money. You end up paying her tax yourself, earning a raised eyebrow from Harper. "You'll go broke doing that," he warns as you ride away. "Maybe," you admit, "but I couldn't take their last dollar." Harper studies you. "You're different than Davis. He was a good lawman, but hard, followed the letter of the law, no exceptions." "And what kind am I?" you ask. Harper shrugs. "Too soon to tell. But that widow back there, she'll remember what you did. Word will spread." By midday, you've collected from most of the smaller holdings. The larger ranches, like the Circle B, are another matter. Those owners often spend time in town and handle their taxes through the bank, which brings you to your next unpleasant duty. The Circle B's foreman, a bull of a man named Jackson, isn't pleased to see you when you arrive. Word travels fast and he knows why you're there, and it's not about taxes. "Pete Rawlins ain't here," he says flatly, not bothering to dismount from his horse as you ride into the ranch yard. "Lit out 2 days ago." Harper gives you a look that says, "Told you so." "Any idea where he was headed?" you ask. Jackson shrugs. "Not my job to keep track of the boys on their time off. Pete got paid, same as everyone, probably off spending it on women and whiskey in the next county." 2 days ago, you repeat. "That would be the day Sam Johnson was killed." The foreman's eyes narrow. "You accusing one of my men, Sheriff?" "Just collecting facts," you say mildly. "Johnson and some of your men had a dispute recently, I hear." Jackson spits. "Johnson was always complaining about something, cattle on his land, water rights. Man was a burr under the saddle. But none of my boys would kill him over it." You're not convinced, but without Pete Rawlins to question, there's not much more to do here. You take your leave, promising to return if you have more questions. "Well," Harper says as you ride back toward town, "Pete running off doesn't look good for him, but unless we find more evidence, or he comes back, that case might go cold." The thought sits uneasily with you. Your first murder as sheriff, and the trail already growing cold. What will you tell Mrs. Johnson and her children? The sun is high overhead when you return to town. Your next duty awaits, checking on the jail and its current occupants. Last night, while you were preoccupied with the Johnson murder, Harper had locked up 2 drunks who were fighting outside the gilded cage. The cells are simple affairs. Iron bars, wooden bunks with thin mattresses, a bucket in the corner for necessities. Not comfortable, but not cruel either. The 2 men inside look miserable, nursing hangovers and bruised faces. "Rise and shine, gentlemen," Harper calls, his voice deliberately louder than necessary. Both men wince. "Oh, come on, Bill," one groans. "Have mercy," Harper chuckles. "Sheriff, meet Tom Riley and Fergus O'Malley, regular customers. They work for the railroad, laying track. Every payday, they drink too much and try to kill each other. Then they're best friends again by morning." The men look sheepish. It's clear this is something of a routine. "We didn't mean nothing by it," Riley says, "just blowing off steam. You broke a window at the Mercantile," Harper reminds him, "and O'Malley here took a swing at me when I tried to break it up." "Did I?" O'Malley asks, genuinely confused. "Sorry about that, Bill." Maintaining the jail is another of your duties. You check that the cell doors are secure, that there's water for the prisoners, that the place is reasonably clean. The building itself is simple. Your office in front with a desk, chairs, and a gun rack. Behind that, a heavy door leads to the cells. 2 today, but the space could be expanded if needed. "What's the fine for drunk and disorderly?" you ask Harper. $5 each, plus damages for the window. Riley and O'Malley exchange glances. "We can pay," Riley says. "Soon as we can get to the bank, you unlock the cell. See that you do, and maybe consider spending your next payday somewhere other than the bottom of a bottle." They scurry out, promising to return with the money. Whether they will or not remains to be seen. No sooner have they left than a new visitor arrives. Dr. Reynolds, the town physician, a serious man with spectacles and a perpetually worried expression. "Oh, Sheriff," he says with a nod. "I've examined Johnson's body. Thought you should know what I found." You usher him to a chair. "What can you tell me, Doc?" Reynolds removes his spectacles, polishing them with a handkerchief. "He was beaten severely, as you saw. Cause of death was likely a blow to the head with a heavy object, consistent with the piece of firewood you found. But there's something else." He leans forward. Some of the bruising had already begun to develop before death, and his knuckles were bruised and cut. "He fought back," you conclude. "Indeed, quite vigorously, I'd say. Whoever killed him likely has injuries of their own. Bruised face, perhaps cracked ribs. This is useful information. Pete Rawlins fleeing with unexplained injuries would be damning evidence. You thank the doctor for his time. As Reynolds leaves, your next visitor arrives. Mayor Pemberton, still looking uncomfortable around you after your exchange about the snake oil salesman. "Sheriff," he says stiffly, "a word?" You gesture to the chair the doctor just vacated. The mayor sits, adjusting his vest. "I understand you've hired Bill Harper as your deputy." "That's right. The town council wasn't consulted on this expense." You lean back in your chair. "The previous sheriff had a deputy. I assumed the position and its salary were already approved." Pemberton frowns. "Well, yes, but we thought with a new sheriff we might reassess the need." Translation: they hoped to save money by having you work alone. "Mayor," you say calmly, "I need a deputy, especially with a murder investigation ongoing and a cattle drive coming to town. Unless you'd prefer to explain to the townsfolk why their safety isn't worth the expense." The mayor sighs. "Very well. But in the future, please consult the council before making decisions that affect the town budget." After he leaves, Harper returns from his lunch. "Mayor looks like he swallowed a lemon," he observes. "He's not happy about me rehiring you." Harper snorts. "Pemberton's never happy unless money's flowing into his pockets instead of out. Don't let him bully you, boss." "Not planning to," you assure him. "Now, about this cattle drive coming in. What should I expect?" Harper's expression turns serious. "Trouble. About 30 cowboys, most of them young, all of them with months of pay burning holes in their pockets. They'll hit the saloons first, then the cat house at the edge of town. By midnight, we'll have fights, property damage, maybe worse." How did Sheriff Davis handle it? Deputized extra men for the duration, made sure they were visible on the streets, locked up the worst troublemakers early before they could really get going. You nod. It makes sense. "Who would you recommend deputizing?" Harper thinks for a moment. Jack Weber at the livery stable, former army, good in a fight, the Swenson brothers from the mill, big fellows intimidating, and maybe old Thomas from the barber shop. He's sneaky fast with those hands. It's a good list. You make a mental note to speak with each of them before the cattle drive arrives. The afternoon brings more mundane tasks, paperwork, endless paperwork, reports to file about the tax collection, forms to complete for the county seat regarding the murder investigation, a telegram to send to neighbouring towns asking about Pete Rawlins. While you work, Harper mans the front desk, handling the stream of visitors. Most have trivial concerns, noise complaints, minor disputes with neighbours, lost property. A few bring useful information, sightings of suspicious characters, rumours about cattle rustling to the north. By mid-afternoon, you've developed a headache from all the reading and writing. You stand, stretching your back, and grab your hat. "I'm going to walk the town," you tell Harper. "Get some air." He nods, understanding. "Good idea. Let folks see their new sheriff. I'll hold down the fort." Main Street is busy at this hour. The general store doing brisk business, the blacksmith's hammer ringing out from his shop, wagons and riders moving back and forth, kicking up dust that hangs in the air like a veil. You move through it all at an unhurried pace, nodding to those who greet you, stopping occasionally to exchange a few words. Outside the bank, you encounter Mrs. Henderson, the woman who'd complained about her neighbour's dog. She beams when she sees you. "Sheriff Callahan, I wanted to thank you. Mr. Peterson has tied up that wretched animal, and my garden is safe at last." You smile. "Glad to hear it, ma'am. Sometimes all it takes is a conversation." "Well, I had plenty of conversations with him myself, but he never listened to me. It took that badge of yours to get his attention." There's truth in what she says. The badge carries weight, grants authority, but it also creates expectations, people looking to you to solve their problems, big and small. As you continue your walk, you pass the schoolhouse where children are just being dismissed for the day. They spill out into the yard, laughing and shouting, momentarily free from lessons. The school teacher, Miss Lawrence, watches from the doorway, a young woman from back east bringing education to the frontier. She catches your eye and waves you over. "Sheriff," she says when you reach her, "I was hoping to speak with you." "What can I do for you, Miss Lawrence?" She glances around to ensure no children are within earshot. "Some of my students have been unsettled. Talking about the murder, I wondered if you might address the school tomorrow, reassure them that they're safe, that justice will be done." You hadn't considered how Johnson's murder might affect the town's children. Of course they'd be frightened, a man killed in their small community, the killer still at large. "I'd be happy to," you tell her. "What time would be best?" They arrange for you to visit in the morning. As you walk away, you realize this is another aspect of the job the dime novels never mention, being a source of reassurance and stability for the community, especially its most vulnerable members. Your path takes you past the telegraph office, where the operator, a thin man named Morris, flags you down. "Sheriff, got a reply to your inquiry about Pete Rawlins." Your pulse quickens as you step inside. "What does it say?" Morris hands you the telegram. It's from the sheriff in Council Grove, the next county over. "Rawlins here. Stop badly beaten. Stop claiming bar fight. Stop holding him query." You read it twice to be sure. Pete Rawlins in custody one county over, bearing injuries consistent with a fierce struggle. It's not proof, but it's enough to warrant further investigation. "Send a reply," you tell Morris. "Ask them to hold him until I can get there. I'll leave at first light tomorrow." After sending your reply to the Council Grove sheriff, you head back to the office, eager to share the news with Harper. The pieces are starting to fall into place. If Pete Rawlins killed Sam Johnson, you might be close to solving your first murder case. Harper is locking the front door when you arrive, ready to end his shift for the day. "Got a lead on Rawlins," you tell him, showing him the telegram. "He's in Council Grove." Harper reads it, his expression thoughtful. "Badly beaten, huh? Convenient that he's claiming a bar fight." Too convenient, you agree. I'm riding out tomorrow to bring him back. Want company? Harper offers. You consider it. Having backup would be wise if Rawlins resists. But leaving the town without law enforcement, especially with the cattle drive approaching, seems risky. Better if you stay, you decide. Keep an eye on things here. I should be back by nightfall tomorrow. Harper nods, accepting your decision. Be careful. Even injured, Rawlins is dangerous. Mean streak a mile wide. You part ways at the corner of Main Street, Harper heading to his small room at the boarding house, you toward home and Margaret. But your day isn't over yet. As you pass the Gilded Cage saloon, a commotion erupts inside, shouting, the crash of breaking glass, then a man flying backward through the swinging doors to land in the dust of the street. He's followed by a mountain of a man with a red beard and massive fists. "Try that again, you little weasel!" the big man roars, standing over the fallen figure. You sigh. So much for a quiet evening at home. "That's enough," you call, striding forward. "Break it up." The big man turns, sizing you up. Recognition dawns in his bloodshot eyes when he sees your badge. "New sheriff," he says, swaying slightly. "Callahan, right?" "That's right. And you are?" "Butch Hogan. I drive for the Murphy outfit." He gestures dismissively at the man still sprawled in the dirt. "This card sharp was cheating me. Saw him slip a card from his sleeve." The accused man scrambles to his feet, dusting himself off. He's small and wiry, with a gambler's pale complexion from too many hours indoors. "I did no such thing," he protests. "The gentleman is simply a poor loser." Hogan lunges for him again, but you step between them, hand on your gun. "I said, that's enough." The big man stops, his face flushed with anger and whiskey. For a moment you think he might try to go through you to get to the gambler, but then he spits in the dirt and backs down. "Your town, your rules," he mutters, "but keep that cheater away from me, or next time I'll break more than just a table." He stomps back into the saloon, the doors swinging behind him. The gambler straightens his vest, attempting to regain his dignity. "I appreciate your intervention, Sheriff. The brute had no cause to assault me. Were you cheating him?" The man looks offended. "Certainly not. I'm a professional card player, not a common swindler." You've met his type before. Smooth talkers who travel from town to town, separating the locals from their money with skillful play and, when necessary, skillful cheating. "What's your name?" "Elliot James, at your service." He offers a small bow. "Well, Mr. James, I suggest you move on to the next table, or better yet, the next town. We don't need trouble." James gives you a calculating look. "Are you ordering me to leave town, Sheriff? On what grounds? I've broken no laws." He has you there. Being a suspected card cheat isn't enough to run someone out of town. You need proof, or at least a complaint from someone willing to press charges. "No," you concede. "But I am asking you to consider whether it's worth your while to stay. The cattle drive arrives soon. Those cowboys work hard for their money. They don't take kindly to losing it unfairly." James seems to weigh his options. A town full of cowboys flush with cash is prime territory for a card sharp, but getting caught cheating by the wrong cowboy could be fatal. "Perhaps you're right," he says finally. "I find the climate here suddenly less hospitable. I believe the evening stage still has room." You watch him walk toward the stage office, confident you've seen the last of Elliot James, one potential problem averted. The sun is sinking toward the horizon now, casting long shadows down Main Street. Most respectable businesses are closing for the day, while the saloons are just coming to life. Night brings different challenges for a lawman: drunkenness, fights, occasionally more serious trouble. You decide to continue your patrol rather than heading home immediately. Margaret will understand. The town needs to see its sheriff present and vigilant, especially in the evening hours when trouble is most likely to brew. The Gilded Cage is the largest of the town's 3 saloons, occupying a prime corner lot on Main Street. Inside, the atmosphere is boisterous but not yet rowdy. Early evening drinkers, shopkeepers unwinding after a day's work, ranch hands in town on errands, a few travellers passing through, occupy the tables and line the long bar. The bartender, a bald man with impressive moustaches and forearms like hams, nods to you as you enter. "Evening, Sheriff. What brings you by? Thirsty?" "Just checking in, Floyd. Any trouble besides that scuffle with the gambler?" Floyd shrugs, polishing a glass. "Quiet night so far, but it's early yet." You make a circuit of the room, noting faces, assessing moods. Most nod respectfully or tip their hats when they notice your badge. A few avert their eyes, suggesting they have something to hide or simply don't like lawmen on principle. You file away these reactions for future reference. In a dark corner, you spot a familiar face, the young cowboy from the Circle B who'd threatened you on your first day, then later tipped you off about Pete Rawlins. He's drinking alone, his expression morose. On impulse, you approach his table. "Mind if I join you?" He looks up, surprised. After a moment's hesitation, he gestures to the empty chair across from him. "Free country." You sit, studying him. Up close, he looks younger than you initially thought, barely 20, with a wispy attempt at a moustache and eyes that have seen too much for his age. "Didn't catch your name before," you say. He takes a swig from his glass. Billy Reed. "You were right about Pete Rawlins, Billy. He's been found 1 county over, all beat up, just like someone who'd been in a fight with Sam Johnson might be." Billy's expression doesn't change, but his knuckles whiten around his glass. "That's so?" "It is. I'm riding out tomorrow to bring him back." You lean forward slightly. "Anything else you think I should know before I do?" Billy is silent for a long moment. When he speaks, his voice is low. "Pete's got friends, the kind who won't take kindly to him being arrested. Are you one of those friends?" He meets your gaze directly for the first time. "No, Pete's a mean drunk and a bully, but I work with men who like him, who'd take his side no matter what. Even if he murdered an innocent man," Billy looks away, "some wouldn't care, would say Johnson had it coming for complaining about the cattle." It's a sobering thought. You've known men like that, for whom loyalty to their own outweighs any sense of right and wrong, the kind who'd resort to violence to protect one of their own, guilty or not. "Thanks for the warning," you say, rising from the table. "I'll keep my eyes open." As you turn to leave, Billy speaks again. "Sheriff, Pete carries a knife in his boot. Left one. Don't let him get to it." You nod your thanks for this potentially life-saving information, then continue your rounds. The town's other 2 saloons, the Frontier and the Dusty Bull, are smaller establishments catering to different clientele. The Frontier attracts a quieter crowd, mostly older men who prefer conversation to carousing. The Dusty Bull at the far end of Main Street has a rougher reputation. That's where you head next. Even from half a block away, you can hear the raucous noise spilling from the Dusty Bull's doors. Inside, it's crowded and smoky, the air thick with the smell of whiskey, sweat, and tobacco. A tinny piano plays in the corner, barely audible over the din of voices. The owner, a former boxer named Mac Sullivan, spots you immediately. He makes his way through the crowd, his broken nose and cauliflower ears testaments to his former profession. "Sheriff," he greets you gruffly. "Problem?" "Just making my rounds, Mac. How's business?" Mac grunts. "Can't complain. Listen, I run a clean place here. My boys know to take trouble outside." You glance around at the crowded room. Your boys look like they are the trouble. He chuckles, a raspy sound. Maybe so, but they know the rules. No guns inside, no fighting inside, no cheating at cards. Everything else, I look the other way. You notice a sign behind the bar. Check your guns. It's common practice in many frontier towns, requiring patrons to surrender their firearms while drinking. It cuts down on deadly violence, though men will still fight with fists, chairs, bottles, or whatever else is at hand. I see you enforce the no guns rule, you observe. Mac nods. Have to. Had a shooting 2 years back. Bad for business. Now everyone checks their iron at the door. He gestures to a rack behind the bar where several revolvers and even a rifle or two are stored. Get 'em back when they leave, assuming they're sober enough to be trusted with them. It's a sensible policy, one you plan to enforce more widely as the cattle drive approaches. Men, alcohol, and firearms are a volatile combination. As you're about to leave, a disturbance breaks out at the far end of the bar. 2 men are shoving each other, voices raised in anger. Before you can intervene, Mac is there, grabbing each by the scruff of the neck like misbehaving puppies. "Outside!" he bellows, physically propelling them toward the door. "You want to fight, you do it in the street!" The men stumble outside, their argument momentarily forgotten in the face of Mac's forceful intervention. You follow, curious to see if they'll resume their dispute away from the barkeeper's watchful eye. Sure enough, once outside, they square off again. One is a local ranch hand you recognize vaguely. The other is a stranger, perhaps a drifter or a cowboy from one of the more distant spreads. "Gentlemen," you say loudly, making your presence known. "Is there a problem here?" They turn, both startled to find the sheriff witnessing their confrontation. The local recovers first. "No problem, Sheriff. Just a disagreement about a lady's honor," the stranger snorts. "Lady? That painted cat in there ain't no lady." You sigh inwardly. "A dispute over one of the saloon girls, then. Tale as old as time. Whatever she is or isn't, it's not worth shedding blood over. Why don't you both cool off? Take a walk. Find different saloons for the rest of the night." They glare at each other, neither wanting to back down, but neither eager to continue the fight under your watch. Finally, the local spits in the dirt. "Ain't worth my time anyway," he mutters, turning away. The stranger watches him go, then gives you a nod. "Thanks, Sheriff. Probably saved me a beating. That fella's got a reputation." "Just doing my job," you reply. "But a word of advice, be careful whose reputation you challenge in this town. Not everyone would pause just because a lawman shows up." He takes the warning to heart, touching the brim of his hat respectfully before heading back inside the Dusty Bull. Crisis averted, at least for now, but the incident reminds you of the constant vigilance required of a sheriff. So much of keeping the peace is prevention, stepping in before situations escalate, making your presence known, establishing boundaries. The sky is fully dark now, the streets lit only by the glow from windows and the occasional lantern hung outside a business. Most respectable citizens are home for the evening, leaving the streets to those with less savoury intentions or nowhere else to go. As you continue your patrol, a rider comes tearing into town from the east, his horse lathered and blowing hard. He reins in sharply when he spots you. "Sheriff," he calls, dismounting in a rush. "Thank God, we need help out at the Wallace place. Rustlers hit them about an hour ago. Old man Wallace is shot up bad." Your heart sinks. Cattle rustling is a constant problem in ranching country, and it often turns violent when the owners try to protect their livestock. "How many rustlers?" you ask, already calculating your response. "4 maybe 5, the rider says. They took 20 head of prime beef cattle, headed west toward the territorial line. The territorial line is about 15 miles away. If the rustlers cross it, they'll be outside your jurisdiction. You need to move fast. Get to Doc Reynolds, you instruct the rider. Tell him to ride out to the Wallace place right away. Then find Deputy Harper at the boarding house. Tell him what's happened and to meet me at the livery stable. The rider nods and hurries off toward the doctor's house. You head for the livery at a run. If you're going to catch these rustlers before they cross the territorial line, you'll need fresh horses and a posse. This is exactly the kind of situation where a sheriff's authority to deputize civilians becomes essential. The livery stable is dark when you arrive, but you pound on the door until the owner, Jack Weber, appears in his nightshirt, lantern in hand. "Sheriff, what's the trouble?" "Or rustlers hit the Wallace place. I need your fastest horses and I need you to ride with me." Weber doesn't hesitate. "Give me 2 minutes to dress." While he prepares, you consider who else to deputize for this dangerous mission. The Swenson brothers from the mill would be ideal. Strong, reliable men who know how to handle themselves. But the mill is on the other side of town, and time is critical. Harper arrives, buckling on his gun belt. "Got the news. How bad is Wallace hurt?" "Don't know yet. Doc's on his way out there. Our job is to catch the rustlers before they cross the line." Harper nods grimly. 4 or 5 of them against the 3 of us? Not great odds. "We don't have time to gather more men," you say. "We'll have to make do." Weber emerges from the stable leading 3 saddled horses, his rifle already secured in its scabbard. "These are my best. They can run all night if needed." You mount up, checking your revolver and the spare ammunition in your saddlebags. This will be your first real test as sheriff, pursuing armed criminals who've already shown they're willing to kill. It's the dangerous reality of law enforcement on the frontier, where help is scarce and vast distances separate small pockets of civilization. "Ready?" you ask your small posse. Harper pats the neck of his horse. "Ready as we'll ever be." With that, you dig your heels into your mount's flanks and gallop west into the darkness, toward whatever awaits at the territorial line. The chase lasts through the night, a blur of thundering hooves and straining muscles. You track the rustlers by moonlight, following the clear trail left by 20 head of cattle being driven hard. Harper's experience proves invaluable, keeping you on their trail even when the signs grow faint. Dawn breaks as you crest a ridge and spot them in the valley below. 4 men driving the stolen cattle toward a tree line that marks the territorial boundary, just 2 miles distant. Once they cross that line, they'll be beyond your authority, requiring cooperation from another jurisdiction that may or may not come. "We need to move fast," you tell Harper and Weber. "Cut them off before they reach those trees." The plan is simple but dangerous. Ride hard down the slope, get ahead of the herd, and force the rustlers to surrender or fight. With 4 against 3, a fight means bloodshed, perhaps death. But you've sworn to uphold the law, and sometimes that means risking everything. The rustlers spot you as you thunder down the hillside. They react instantly, 2 breaking off to drive the cattle harder toward the boundary, while the other 2 wheel around, rifles raised. "Down!" Harper shouts as muzzle flashes burst from the rustlers' weapons. Bullets whine past your head as you flatten yourself against your horse's neck, still galloping full tilt toward the gunman. Weber returns fire with his rifle, forcing the rustlers to seek cover behind the milling cattle. It gives you the opening you need to get within revolver range. "Throw down your weapons!" you shout above the din of frightened cattle and thundering hooves. "You're under arrest." Their answer comes in the form of more gunfire. A bullet tears through your coat sleeve, missing flesh by inches. Another strikes Weber's horse, bringing the animal down in a screaming heap that throws the liveryman clear but leaves him stunned in the dirt. Harper circles wide to flank the rustlers, his revolver barking steadily. You see one of the gunmen jerk and fall as Harper's shot finds its mark. The other ducks behind a steer, firing wildly in Harper's direction. The two rustlers driving the cattle have almost reached the tree line. If they make it, the stolen livestock and evidence of the crime will be lost. You make a split-second decision, spurring your horse toward them while Harper deals with the remaining gunman. The nearest rustler sees you coming and turns in his saddle, leveling a revolver at your chest. You fire first, your shot going wide, but causing him to flinch and miss as well. Before either of you can fire again, your horses collide at full gallop. The impact hurls both of you from your saddles. You hit the ground hard, the wind knocked from your lungs, your revolver flying from your grasp. The rustler lands nearby, equally stunned. For a moment you both lie gasping in the dirt. Then, by unspoken agreement, you scramble for your weapons. The rustler reaches his gun first, swinging it toward you with murder in his eyes. You brace for the bullet, but before he can fire, a shot rings out and he collapses, a red stain spreading across his chest. Harper stands 50 yards away, revolver still raised. The final rustler, seeing his companions fallen, surrenders without further fight. By the time the dust settles, 2 rustlers are dead, 1 wounded and 1 in custody. Weber has a nasty gash on his head from his fall, but is otherwise unharmed. The stolen cattle are recovered, though a few have scattered in the confusion. It's a clear victory for law and order, but there's no pleasure in it. Men have died, and you were nearly among them. The ride back to town is long and somber. The wounded rustler slumped over his saddle, the dead tied across their horses like slaughtered game. By the time you reach town, it's late afternoon. News of the gunfight has preceded you, carried by a witness from a distant farm who saw the battle and rode ahead. A crowd gathers on Main Street as your grim procession arrives, murmurs rippling through the onlookers at the sight of the dead rustlers. You hand off the prisoners to the town jailer, an elderly man named Perkins, who maintains the cells when neither you nor Harper are available. The wounded man will need the doctor's attention, but Reynolds is still out at the Wallace place, tending to the rancher's injuries. "I'll fetch the undertaker for the others," Harper says, his voice weary. He looks older today, the lines in his face deeper, his eyes shadowed from the night's exertions. "How's your head?" you ask Weber, who has a blood-stained bandage wrapped around his forehead. "Hurts like hell," the liveryman admits, "but I'll live. You think we could have a drink sometime, Sheriff? I feel like I've earned one." Despite your exhaustion, you smile. "I'd say you've earned a whole bottle, Jack. Thanks for riding with us." After ensuring the prisoners are secure and arrangements are made for the dead, you finally turn your steps toward home. Every muscle in your body aches from the hard ride and the fight. Your hands shake slightly from the aftermath of danger and the knowledge of how close you came to death. The bullet hole in your sleeve is a stark reminder of your mortality. As you approach your house, you see Margaret standing on the porch, her face tight with worry. She must have heard about the gunfight, about the dead and wounded, but not known if you were among them. When she spots you walking up the path, the relief that washes over her features is like sunrise after the longest night. She doesn't run to you or make a scene. It's not her way. But when you reach the porch, her arms go around you with desperate strength, her face pressed against your chest. "I heard there was shooting," she says simply. "I'm all right," you assure her, holding her close, feeling the tension slowly leave her body. Not even a scratch. Inside, your home feels like a sanctuary after the violence and danger of the past 24 hours. It's a modest place, 3 rooms downstairs, a kitchen, a parlour, and your small study, 2 bedrooms upstairs, but to you, it's a palace of comfort and safety. The familiar smells of Margaret's cooking, the worn furniture that bears the imprints of your bodies, the photographs and small mementos that tell the story of your lives together. All of it wraps around you like a warm blanket. Margaret brings you hot water for washing, then sets a simple meal before you. Beef stew, biscuits, coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. You eat ravenously, suddenly aware of how long it's been since your last meal. "Tell me what happened," she says as you eat. Not demanding, but offering the chance to unburden yourself. So you tell her. The rustlers, the chase, the gunfight, the men who died, the bullets that missed you by inches. You don't soften it or dress it up. Margaret has never asked for pretty lies, and you've never offered them. In a dangerous world, truth between you is the one luxury you can afford. When you finish, she's silent for a long moment, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup so tightly her knuckles show white. "That's the job," she says finally. "I knew that when you pinned on the badge, but knowing and living it are different things." You reach across the table, covering her hand with yours. "I was careful, Margaret. I came back to you. This time," she says, meeting your eyes. "But what about next time? Or the time after that? The odds catch up, John. They always do." It's a conversation you've had before in different forms. The risk of your profession hangs over your marriage like a storm cloud, always present even on the sunniest days. "I know," you acknowledge, "but someone has to do this job. If good men turn away from it, what happens to towns like ours?" She sighs, a sound of resignation rather than agreement. "I just wish it didn't have to be my good man." After dinner, exhaustion catches up with you. You can barely keep your eyes open as you climb the stairs to your bedroom. Margaret helps you undress, her touch gentle as she eases your shirt over shoulders stiffened by the long ride and the fight. She notices the bullet hole in the sleeve, her fingers tracing the ragged edges of the tear, but she makes no comment. Sleep claims you almost as soon as your head touches the pillow, pulling you down into blessed darkness. Morning brings stiffness and soreness, but also a sense of accomplishment. The rustlers have been dealt with, the stolen cattle returned, justice served. It's why you took the badge. Moments like these, when right prevails over wrong, when law overcomes lawlessness. Margaret is already up when you make your way downstairs, moving carefully on legs that protest every step. The coffee is ready, eggs and bacon waiting on the stove. This is her contribution to the peace of the town, keeping its sheriff fed, rested, and steady. It's no small thing, though few would recognise it as the vital service it is. "Will you be home for supper tonight?" she asks as you strap on your gun belt. "I'll try," you promise, though both of you know the job makes liars of even the most honest men when it comes to keeping such commitments. She nods, accepting this uncertainty as part of the life she's chosen, the life she continues to choose each day she remains by your side. The kiss you share before you leave is brief but heartfelt, a reminder of what you're fighting to protect, of what waits for you if you're fortunate enough to return each night. The town is quieter than usual as you make your way to the sheriff's office. Word of yesterday's gunfight has spread, reminding citizens of the thin line between civilization and chaos, and their dependence on men like you to maintain that line. Harper is already at the office, looking as worn as you feel but functioning nonetheless. The resilience of old lawmen is something to behold. They bend but rarely break, carrying on through pain, exhaustion, and the weight of their experiences. "How's our prisoner?" you ask. Doc patched him up last night when he got back from the Wallace place. Says he'll live to hang. Harper pours coffee for both of you. Wallace wasn't so lucky. Died just before dawn, according to Reynolds. Too much blood loss. The news hits you like a physical blow. Old man Wallace, dead because he tried to protect what was his. A good man, by all accounts. Husband, father, grandfather, pillar of the community. Now gone. Another victim of the lawlessness that plagues the frontier. His family? Widows staying with her sister in town. 2 sons talking about tracking down anyone connected to the rustlers. I told them to let the law handle it, but Harper shrugs, the gesture conveying volumes about the likelihood of the young men heeding his advice. It's a common story out here. Grief turning to vengeance, vengeance to more bloodshed. The cycle of violence that lawmen like you are trying, against overwhelming odds, to break. I'll talk to them, you decide. Try to make them see reason. Harper nods. Good luck with that. Meanwhile, we've got the inquest to handle, paperwork on the shooting, arrangements for returning the stolen cattle, and the council wants a report on how much the whole business cost the town. Always the bureaucracy, even in matters of life and death, the mundane details that follow the dramatic moments, the paperwork that chronicles and justifies every action, every bullet fired, every life taken in the name of the law. You spend the morning dealing with these necessities, your mind occasionally drifting to Margaret and your conversation the night before, her worry, her resignation, the unspoken question that hangs between you. How long can you continue to risk your life this way? How many near misses before the odds catch up? Around noon, a visitor arrives at the office. Sarah Wallace, the widow of the murdered rancher. She's a small woman, her face lined by years in the harsh prairie sun, her back straight despite her grief. She wears simple black, her hair pulled back severely from her face. "Sheriff Callahan," she says, her voice steady. "I wanted to thank you for catching the men who killed my husband." You stand respectfully. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Wallace. Your husband was a good man." "Yes, he was." She twists a handkerchief in her hands, the only outward sign of her emotions. "They tell me 2 of the rustlers are dead, 1 wounded, 1 unharmed." "That's right." She nods, processing this information. "And what will happen to the living?" "They'll stand trial for murder and cattle rustling. The evidence is clear. They'll hang." It's said matter-of-factly, not to be cruel, but because here, on the frontier, justice is often as stark and uncompromising as the land itself. Cattle rustling alone can carry the death penalty in some jurisdictions. Combined with murder, the outcome is certain. Mrs. Wallace absorbs this, her expression unreadable. Will it bring Thomas back? The question catches you off guard. "No, ma'am, nothing can do that." Then what's the point of it all? The law, the badges, the guns, the killing. If it can't protect a man on his own land, if it can't bring him back when it fails, what good is it? It's the fundamental question that every lawman must answer for himself, that every community must answer collectively. What is law for if not to preserve life? And when it fails in that primary purpose, as it inevitably sometimes does, what justifies its continued authority? The law can't bring your husband back, you acknowledge, but it can prevent other husbands, other fathers from meeting the same fate. It can create a world where disputes aren't settled with bullets, where might doesn't make right. She studies you, measuring your sincerity. "My boys want blood. They're young and full of fire. They say if the law had done its job, their father would still be alive." They might be right, you admit. We can't be everywhere, can't stop every crime before it happens, but vengeance won't bring him back either. It will just put them in the ground beside him or at the end of a hangman's rope. Mrs. Wallace sighs, suddenly looking every one of her years and more. I've told them the same. I don't know if they'll listen, to them or to me. Send them to me, you suggest. Let me try to talk some sense into them. She nods, though whether in agreement or just acknowledgement of your offer is unclear. Before she leaves, she pauses at the door. Sheriff, my Thomas always said a man who carries a badge carries the weight of everyone who depends on him. It's a heavy burden. Make sure you have strong shoulders. With that, she's gone, leaving you to ponder her words and the weight you've chosen to bear. The rest of the afternoon passes in a blur of duties and decisions. You write your report on the gunfight. You check on the wounded rustler who glares at you with hatred from his cot in the cell. You telegram the territorial marshal about the incident since it occurred near the boundary of your jurisdiction. Through it all, your thoughts keep returning to Margaret, to your home, to the life you're trying to balance against the demands of the badge. It's a struggle every lawman faces, being husband and sheriff, family man and fighter of other men's battles. Few manage it perfectly. Many fail completely, ending up with broken marriages or early graves or both. As evening approaches, you make a decision. The paperwork can wait. The town can survive without your watchful eye for one night. Tonight belongs to Margaret, to the relationship that sustains you through the dark and dangerous times. You leave the office earlier than usual, stopping by the general store to purchase a small gift for Margaret, a bottle of lavender water that you know she favours but rarely buys for herself, considering it an unnecessary luxury. The shopkeeper wraps it carefully in brown paper, his eyebrows raised slightly at the sheriff's uncharacteristic purchase, but he makes no comment, merely wishes you a pleasant evening. The streets are relatively quiet as you walk home, the golden light of late afternoon casting long shadows across the dusty road. A few people nod or tip their hats as you pass. You've been sheriff less than 2 weeks, but already they look at you differently. With respect, with expectation, perhaps with a touch of fear. The badge changes how the world sees you and eventually how you see yourself. At home, Margaret is surprised to see you so early, and more surprised by the small package you present to her. She unwraps it carefully, her eyes softening when she sees what's inside. "What's the occasion?" she asks, removing the stopper to breathe in the delicate scent. "No occasion," you tell her. "Just a thank you for understanding, for waiting, for worrying and still letting me go each morning." She studies your face, sensing there's more beneath your words. "What's really on your mind, John?" You've never been able to hide your thoughts from her. 15 years of marriage has made her fluent in your silences, your expressions, the things you don't say. "I've been thinking about what you said last night, about the odds catching up eventually." You take her hands in yours. "You're right. This job, it's dangerous. Men with badges tend to die wearing them, but I need you to know something." She waits, patient, giving you the space to find the words. "I didn't take this badge for glory or adventure. I took it because someone needs to stand between the innocent and those who would prey on them. But you and our home, you're my anchor, my reason, the thing I fight to come back to." Margaret's eyes glisten with unshed tears. "I know, John. I've always known. I just get scared sometimes." You have every right to be, but I promise you this, I won't take unnecessary risks. I won't play the hero if there's another way. I'll do everything in my power to come home to you every night. It's a promise you both know you might not be able to keep. The nature of the job makes liars of even the most honest men, but the intention behind it matters, the commitment to try. You spend the evening together, just the two of you, in the quiet sanctuary of your home. No talk of rustlers or murders or jail cells, just a husband and wife sharing a meal, sharing the small events of their separate days, rediscovering the simple pleasure of each other's company uninterrupted by the demands of the badge. Later, as you sit together on the porch watching darkness claim the land, Margaret broaches a subject you've discussed before but never resolved. "I've been thinking," she says, her voice soft in the gathering twilight, "about children." You glance at her, surprised. "Children?" "Yes, we always said we would, someday, when the time was right, when we were settled. It's true, when you first married, children seemed an obvious part of your future together. But then came the war, and after that the westward journey, and then the struggle to establish the hardware store. Somehow, someday, kept receding into the distance. You think now is the right time, you ask, genuinely curious. With everything so uncertain, Margaret looks out at the darkening street, the windows of neighbouring houses glowing with lamplight, the distant sounds of the town settling in for the night. Life is always uncertain, John, especially out here. If we wait for perfect safety, for complete security, we'll wait forever. She turns to you, her face half shadowed in the dusk. "I'm not getting any younger, neither are you, and I think I'd like to leave something behind. Something more than memories." Her words touch something deep inside you, the same instinct that led you to take the badge, the desire to build something, to protect something, to leave the world better than you found it. Children would be the ultimate expression of that desire, the most enduring legacy. "A little girl with your eyes," you say, smiling at the thought. "Or a boy with your stubborn chin." Margaret laughs softly. "My stubborn chin? Have you looked in a mirror lately, Sheriff Callahan?" You join her laughter, the tension of recent days easing from your shoulders. It feels good to think about the future, about possibilities, about life continuing and growing, even in this harsh and sometimes violent land. Let's do it, you decide. Let's start our family. The joy that lights her face is worth every risk, every danger, every burden the badge might bring. This moment, this woman, this future you envision together, this is what you're fighting to protect. Not just an abstract concept of law and order, but the very real possibility of happiness, of love persisting against all odds. Morning comes with renewed purpose. You rise early, kissing Margaret before she's fully awake, promising to return for supper. Come hell or high water. The streets are quiet at this hour, the town still shaking off the night's slumber. At the office, you find Harper already at his desk, sorting through wanted posters that arrived on yesterday's stage. "Morning, boss," he greets you. "You're looking chipper today." "Feel chipper," you admit. "Sometimes you need to be reminded what you're fighting for." Harper nods, understanding without needing the details. "Speaking of fighting, the Wallace boys came by late yesterday after you'd left. Said their ma sent them." You straighten, instantly alert. "How did that go?" "Better than I expected. They're angry, sure, hurting, but they listened when I told them about the prisoners, about the trial to come. I think they'll let justice take its course." He pauses. "For now, at least. It's a small victory, but an important one. 2 young men choosing the path of law over the path of vengeance, the scales tipping ever so slightly towards civilization and away from the brutal justice of personal retribution." The day unfolds with the usual mixture of mundane tasks and unexpected challenges. You sign paperwork, you check on the prisoners, you mediate a dispute between neighbouring merchants about the placement of a hitching post, you practice your quick draw in the privacy of the office, knowing that the speed of your hand might someday be the difference between life and death. Around noon, a rider gallops into town, pulling up outside your office with news that sends a ripple of tension through your body. The cattle drive has been spotted. They're less than 5 miles out. By nightfall, the town will be inundated with trail-weary cowboys, eager to spend their pay on whiskey, women, and whatever other entertainments they can find. You and Harper spend the afternoon preparing. You visit each saloon, reminding the owners of the town ordinances about serving obviously intoxicated patrons and the requirement that all weapons be checked at the door. You stop by the cat house at the edge of town, where Madame Rosalie promises to keep her girls and customers in line. You check in with the merchants on Main Street, most of whom plan to close early to avoid potential trouble. Finally, you summon the men you've selected as temporary deputies: Jack Webber from the livery, the Swenson brothers from the mill, old Thomas from the barbershop. You issue each a deputy badge and review their duties, maintain a visible presence on the streets, break up fights before they escalate, summon you or Harper if serious trouble develops. They listen soberly, understanding the responsibility you're entrusting to them. As the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, the first sounds of the approaching herd reach the town. The lowing of cattle, the shouts of cowboys, the distant thunder of thousands of hooves. From the roof of the jail, you watch them come. Hundreds of longhorn cattle, dust rising from their passage like smoke, obscuring the dozen or so men who drive them. The cattle will be held in pens outside town until they can be loaded onto trains bound for eastern markets. But the cowboys, their job nearly done, will descend on the town like a thirsty army after months on the dusty trail. You've seen it before in other towns. The sudden influx of young men flush with cash and starved for civilization's pleasures, the inevitable conflicts as they blow off steam, the challenge they present to law and order in small communities like yours. Harper joins you on the roof, his expression grim as he surveys the approaching herd. Going to be a long night, he predicts. You nod, already calculating how to deploy your limited forces for maximum effect. Remember, we're not trying to stop them from having fun. Just keep it from getting out of hand. Easier said than done, Harper mutters. By sunset, the cattle are secured in the pens and the cowboys have arrived in town. They come in a group at first, dusty and trail-worn, but their spirits high at the prospect of hot baths, cold drinks and female company. They spread out quickly, some heading for the bathhouse, others making straight for the saloons, a few seeking the telegraph office to send word of their arrival to waiting families. You station yourself on Main Street, your badge clearly visible, making your presence known without being confrontational. Most of the cowboys nod respectfully as they pass. A few eye you warily, sizing you up, perhaps wondering how strictly you'll enforce the town's rules. None challenge you directly. Not yet, at least. The early hours pass without serious incident. The cowboys are still relatively sober, still washing off the trail dust, still remembering their manners. But as darkness falls and the saloons fill to bursting, the mood begins to shift. Voices grow louder, laughter becomes more raucous. The piano player at the Gilded Cage pounds out lively tunes that spill into the street along with the golden light from the windows. You make regular circuits of the town, checking in with your deputies, visible but not intrusive. It's a delicate balance, maintaining order without dampening the celebration these men have earned after months of hard, dangerous work. Around midnight, the first real trouble erupts. erupts. Two cowboys arguing over a saloon girl at the Dusty Bull come to blows, their fight spilling out into the street. A crowd quickly gathers, some urging the combatants on, others trying to separate them. You push through the throng, your voice carrying above the noise. Break it up! The fighters are too absorbed in their struggle to heed you. Without hesitation, you step between them, catching a wild punch on your shoulder before forcing them apart. I said break it up, now. They glare at you, then at each other, chests heaving, fists still clenched. The crowd watches, their mood balanced on a knife's edge. If you handle this wrong, the situation could escalate beyond your control. What's this about? You demand. He insulted Betsy, one cowboy snarls. He was pouring at her after she told him to stop, the other counters. You glance at the saloon girl standing nearby, her painted face showing more annoyance than distress. Miss Betsy, were either of these gentlemen bothering you? She rolls her eyes. Both of them were getting handsy. I can handle it myself. You turn back to the cowboys. You heard the lady. She doesn't need either of you fighting over her. Now you can shake hands and go your separate ways, or you can spend the night in my jail. Your choice. They hesitate, pride warring with common sense. Finally, the older of the two extends his hand, grudgingly. No hard feelings. His opponent accepts the handshake with equal reluctance. None taken. The crowd, denied the spectacle of a proper fight, begins to disperse, returning to their drinks and games. Crisis averted, at least for now. The night continues in this vein. Small flare-ups that you or your deputies manage to contain before they grow into larger conflagrations. By 3 a.m, the saloons are still going strong, but many of the cowboys have succumbed to exhaustion or excess, sleeping it off in rented rooms, on saloon floors, or occasionally in alleys. You're bone-tired yourself, having been on your feet for nearly 24 hours, but you can't rest yet. The most dangerous time is often just before dawn, when inhibitions are at their lowest and tempers at their shortest. Sure enough, as the eastern sky begins to lighten, a gunshot rings out from the direction of the gilded cage. You run toward the sound, hand on your revolver, heart pounding. Outside the saloon, a crowd has gathered, surrounding two men facing each other in the street, revolvers drawn. "I caught you cheating, you snake," one shouts, his words slurred with drink. "You're a liar and a fool," the other replies, his stance unsteady but his gun hand remarkably steady. You assess the situation quickly. Both men are drunk, angry, and armed. One has already fired once, a warning shot into the air, judging by the lack of obvious injuries, but the next shot will be aimed to kill. "Put down your weapons," you command, stepping into the space between them. "Now!" The crowd goes silent. The two gunmen stare at you, momentarily confused by your interruption of their private drama. "This ain't your business, Sheriff," the first man growls. "Everything that happens in my town is my business," you correct him, "especially when it involves guns. Now I won't tell you again. Put them down." For a heartbeat, you think they might actually turn their weapons on you. Your hand tightens on your revolver, still holstered but ready. Then, with a muttered curse, the first man lowers his gun. After a moment's hesitation, the second follows suit. "Hand them over," you order, extending your free hand. Reluctantly, they surrender their weapons. You pass them to Harper, who has appeared at your side, then address the would-be duelists. "You'll get these back when you're sober and ready to leave town. Until then, you're both spending what's left of the night in my jail." They protest, of course, but they're too drunk and too outnumbered to resist effectively. As you march them toward the jail, the crowd disperses, the entertainment over. That could have gone bad in a hurry, Harper observes quietly. But it didn't, you reply. Sometimes that's the best we can hope for. By dawn, the town is finally quiet. The cowboys sleeping off their excesses, the saloons closed at last. You release your temporary deputies with thanks, promising to call on them again if needed. Then, true to your word to Margaret, you head home for breakfast before snatching a few hours of much-needed sleep. The rest of the cattle drive's stay passes without major incident. There are fights, of course, and drunkenness, and all the usual problems that arise when young men with money meet whiskey and opportunity, but nothing that you and your small force can't handle. No killings, no serious injuries, no property destruction beyond a few broken windows and furniture. When the cowboys finally ride out, continuing their journey to the railroad terminus in the next county, you feel a sense of accomplishment that goes beyond mere survival. You've maintained order, you've protected the town and its citizens, you've done the job you swore to do. In the quiet aftermath, as the town returns to its normal rhythms, you find time to reflect on the path you've chosen. The badge you wear connects you to a tradition that stretches back to the earliest days of civilization, the agreement among people to submit to common rules, to settle disputes through law rather than violence, to entrust their protection to designated members of their community. Here on the frontier, that tradition is still taking root, still competing with older, more primal ways of solving problems. The gun, the knife, the personal vendetta. As a sheriff, you stand at the crossroads of these competing systems, trying to guide your community toward the rule of law, while acknowledging the realities of life in a land where help can be days away, and self-reliance is often the difference between survival and death. It's not an easy position. The badge makes you both protector and target, both servant and authority. It separates you from your neighbors even as it binds you more tightly to their welfare. It demands sacrifices of time, of comfort, of safety that few fully understand. Yet there's honor in it too. Purpose. The knowledge that your actions, your choices, your courage or lack thereof shape the world around you in tangible ways. You're not just passing through life, you're helping to create the conditions under which others live theirs. As weeks turn to months and months to years, you settle into the rhythm of the job. You learn its contours, its seasons. You come to recognize trouble before it fully manifests. You develop instincts about when to intervene and when to let situations resolve themselves. You build relationships with the community you serve, earning their trust through consistent, fair enforcement of the law. There are dark days, of course, days when violence erupts despite your best efforts, days when you're forced to use your weapon to take a life in defense of others or yourself, days when you return home to Margaret with shadows in your eyes that even her love can't fully dispel. But there are good days too. Days when you prevent trouble before it starts. Days when your presence alone is enough to maintain peace. Days when you help someone in need, protect the vulnerable, stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. And in time, there are even better days. Days when your family grows with the birth of your children, a daughter first with Margaret's gentle eyes and your stubborn determination, then a son, curious and adventurous from his first breath. They grow up in the shadow of your badge, learning early the complex relationship between authority and responsibility, between law and justice. You worry about them, of course, about the dangers they might face because of who you are and what you do, but you also hope that they will understand someday why you chose this path, that they will see the badge not as a symbol of power but of service, that they will recognize the sacrifices you've made not as burdens but as investments in the future, their future, and the future of all who call this harsh, beautiful land home. For in the end, that's what being a sheriff in the Wild West truly means. Not the gunfights or the glory or the fear you inspire in wrongdoers, but the quiet daily work of building civilization on the frontier, of creating spaces where people can live and work and raise their families in relative safety, of bending the arc of history ever so slightly toward justice and peace. It's work that rarely makes the pages of dime novels, work that future generations may take for granted, never knowing the price paid by those who wore the badge in the early days. But it's work worth doing, work that matters, work that, despite its dangers and demands, you would choose again if given the chance. And as the years pass and the frontier gradually gives way to settlements, towns, and eventually cities, as the wild edges of the West are slowly tamed by law and commerce and community, you can take quiet pride in knowing that you played a part, however small, in that transformation. That your badge, your courage, your commitment to something larger than yourself helped to create a world where your children and their children can thrive. This is the true legacy of the frontier sheriff, not the legends or the myths, but the reality of lives lived in service to an ideal that persists, that grows stronger with each generation, that continues to shape our understanding of justice and community and what we owe to one another. As you lie in your bed, feeling the weight of the day's exertions, let these thoughts carry you gently towards sleep. The frontier sheriff's story, with its dangers and duties, its triumphs and tragedies, is our story too, a chapter in the ongoing tale of how we learn to live together, to protect each other, to build something lasting in a world of constant change. And with that, close your eyes and drift off to sleep, knowing that the badge will be there in the morning, waiting for you to take up its weight once more. But for now, rest. You've earned it.